Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. We're doing a session on making sense of AI agents. We've got our very own founder of Ecosystem AI, Jay Fansale, who's going to be leading the chat today. It's going to be a part presentation, part demo, so it's going to be a very exciting session. As per usual, we will be putting this event up in recording format so that you can access it later. Please feel free to interact with the chat interface and ask us questions at any point during the presentation. I will handle those. Just to recap, we're going to be talking about how to use AI agents to make money. How is it that it's going to work within any kind of business setting? We're focusing on the banking space and showing you a couple of ways in which Ecosystem AI has come up with this solution. And there will be a big emphasis also on our intelligent sales module, which Jay will tell you a lot more about during the presentation.
Thank you, Jess. So the conversation today is really shaped around how the modules that we've been working on can be used as prepackaged solutions to deliver on a number of predefined outcomes. And the overall concept was really shaped around a concept called prediction as a service. Is there a way that I can take the experiences that I've gained over time in my business or in a provider like Ecosystem and package all the related AI assets in a way that I can move them from one place to another? And that's the background behind how the module concept was created and made it accessible. We have got some exciting launches coming up in the next year or so, and that means that there will be publicly available prediction as a service platform capabilities that, especially for non-commercial users, you'll be able to access what's there without having to buy licenses or anything like that, so that you can try out a lot of these capabilities yourself. And depending on what your case is that you're working on in your organization, so that it'll fast track your understanding of where this will benefit your particular business course that you're taking on in your AI or predictive journey. So the details for today, what Jess was introducing, is that I'll be showing you, and after we've gone through a bit of a storyline, I'll be showing you some of the components that normally need to hang together. For those who attended before will know that it's quite difficult to do an entire demo end-to-end with a lot of the core capabilities and still get the storyline to work. So what I will be doing is take you through some concepts that I think some of you have heard, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, and then to explain how it is materialized inside the product itself, so that you can see how the deployment will happen when you want to employ any of these capabilities in your own environment. So let's think about the concept of how you can drive financial success with AI agents. In our world, there is a product now available on the Apple App Store, and it will be on the Android App Store shortly, where it's called an Ecogentic journey. An Ecogentic journey essentially is the way you can implement AI agents using predictive capabilities that are still accurate and precise and explainable, and essentially conforming to the way in which an organization would need to deliver on how it needs to explain what a certain outcome would look like. And on the other end, you have linguistic tools that can be used to access these capabilities. And there are many new inventions that are now straddling these various areas, and we can touch on what some of those are in this webinar. So for those who know us, you know that we are incredibly focused on cases in production. When we survey our clients and looking at implementation capabilities and where benefits have been had over time, we see that the benefits we bring to our clients are grouped into three major regions: making money, saving money, and protecting money. Making money today is about how can I use intelligent technologies to assist me in making aware, driving engagement, getting consistent interfacing with my customers, so that I can not just obtain, but also retain the people that are working with my institution at the moment, all the way through to, and I create various journeys that will make my staff more productive, get them to execute better, and that means saving money and getting more efficiencies? Is there a way that I can predict there are anomalies or challenges, and how can I then apply any kind of predictive capability to nudge or to escalate as quickly as possible to make sure that I can reduce my risk inside my business? So for those who know this already, bear with me, but for those who haven't, this has been a core part of our focus. For today, the background to the intelligent sales, interaction science, if you think about spend personality, money personality, or interaction personality, or any one of those, sentimental equilibrium, all of those algorithms have now been implemented and made available through various other capabilities that can be used for you to drive some kind of customer engagement, customer success journey. So let's look at a couple of typical examples that will play out in the story. The first thing is that we want to find more appropriate and better ways to get to know our customer. We want to know how do they engage with us, when do they engage with us, what is it that they're dealing with us on in their own life events, how can we provide them with the best possible service so they feel they're getting the right value from the engagement with us. We believe that if you drive a behavioral understanding, the behavioral understanding will give you the background to make sure that you can understand the patterns of interaction. And if you consistently do that and have an algorithmic approach that can provide you with that background, it just makes it so much stronger in the context of how you can then activate or sell and retain or maintain your customer relationships over time. So that means that we think that if you have those core capabilities in place and you have a capability that you can get from ecosystem, that basically means that you can get our intelligent sales capability, you should be able to fast track any of your initiatives in the space. So that means, can I get a storyline that will work in the context of how I can drive engagement and get it to market without having to do this enormous background work that goes into the research, into the data science, into the engineering capabilities, all the way through to the point where you have to put it into production. You want to accelerate and compress that time. And we know that the conversations that we're having with clients, there are always these different dimensions. Do I acquire something from a company like Ecosystem and rely on our intelligence and our capabilities in algorithmic inventions? Or do you want to do all of that yourself? I think at some point you want to combine these to bring people who specialize in solving these problems and then contextualize it within your institution to make sure that it can bring the benefit within your business. So if you take these capabilities and package them, package means I've got both human interactions and human capabilities, and I've got technological assets and technological capabilities. Human capabilities means that we have got a partner network that we work with, and our partners understand the technology pretty well. And that means that if you need somebody to assist you through the implementation journey, through the technological configuration, through all the pieces that you normally need to have in place to get your project to work, you want to be able to get somebody from us that has already been pre-approved, they understand how this works, and to be able to get the implementation work well and making sure that we work closely with our partners to get that done. On the other end, you want to have access to algorithms that have been calibrated, researched, and where we've spent years and years refining a lot of the thinking. And as technological inventions come along, you want to be able to utilize new capabilities to accelerate the implementation and ongoing maintenance required to make these models work over time. If you think of the spend as well as the money personalities, can you take the philosophy of money? Can you apply it reliably and consistently? Can you use that to do dynamic and complex segmentation, complex engagement and messaging? Can we use that to communicate with customers through various digital channels, through an app or a voice? So that means anything that's glass or human or voice interfaces. Can we then have a journey where we can continuously decide if I'm going to sell more to the customer, bring them, if you're in a bank, front of wallet, can I get them to take that loan up? Can I get them to do the mortgage with me? Can I get them to do the overdraft with me? Can I get them to participate in the additional services that would come from the base offerings? And that's where the intelligent sales module comes in, and where you want to have a combination of algorithms that all work together to get you some final solution that you can accelerate your market. And even if acceleration would mean in banking, sometimes the technological obstacles are fairly big, but you want something reliable from your cloud provider or your own data center or on-premise infrastructure. We see it in the two parts. Before you sign up a customer and after, the idea behind intelligent sales is that is there a way that I can segment, get to understand essentially how the humans that I will be serving over time will perceive me, interact with me, and then eventually sign up with what I want them to sign up for based on the offers that I'm interacting with them on. So the discovery phase, we believe there are a number of different algorithms, and especially in the world of agents that can be applied that learn dynamically, either through a chat interface, through an email environment, through a human-to-human interface where the bank's agent gets cued through some kind of nudging to make sure that they can engage with the customer or the potential customer in the correct way. But the idea is that you can have the entire process enabled with some kind of artificial intelligence capabilities. By the time people engage and they sign up and they're going down a journey, you want to be able to run extensive, multivariate, offer-based, product-based experiments, where each experiment will give you a learning, a training capability, and a point in time that you can apply across a broad spectrum of customers that you can resegment by the time you have figured out how they have signed up with you. So during the engagement phase, for example, if somebody signs up and they have to give their ID number and the email address and maybe upload some documents, you want to be able to dynamically decide which panel appears first, or do I onboard the customer at all costs just to make sure that I get them on and then ask them for the details. And maybe I would want to run experiments to decide which panel is more important to deliver first. So you will take on the back end of your intelligent sales module interaction capabilities and the models that help you with guiding the visual interface or the human interface that is talking to the customer, guide them through an intelligent decision-making cycle in line of what it is you want to achieve with your sales journey. By the time they sign up, we believe activation is an enormous opportunity. And activation means people that have signed up and acquired your services. And that means that you should never stop selling actually as a financial services or as an organization. So the idea is that if I go through buyer's remorse or buyer assessments and I don't really want to, let's say in a banking context, is this massive challenge to get my deposit, to basically get the deposit taking issue sorted out. So I want the customer to bring their salary to my bank. What do I do to communicate and nudge them and keep on explaining to them that I am the better option? How do I guide that conversation? And is there a way for my interaction journey to take the person down that journey to make sure that they can engage with me in a far more reliable manner? By the time the customer has been with me for a while, and I want to nudge them, I want to collect from them, I want to upsell, I want to cross-sell, I want to have those capabilities in place so that they're easily accessible. That means that the algorithms that we implement are often scattered across these different areas. So you can use survey systems and abstract collection capabilities. That means more dynamic learning or anything qualitative. You can take your quantitative data and use that to calibrate your algorithm once you understand how people are engaging with you over time. Okay, so that's the background to where the sales, and especially the intelligent sales journey kind of fits in. So in the context of an algorithm, you're all familiar with a spend personality, and for those who are not, go do some reading on our website or poke around the papers that we've published on this, or go to our custom GPT on OpenAI's custom environment, and you'll be able to ask questions and engage with the environment to give you some explanations as to what's going on in that space. So how do we then look at this? First thing is, how do I get to know my customer? How do I understand their behavior? How do I deal with activation? And then how do I retain and maintain? How do I take a person down this journey to get them to a point that they can really engage with us? Okay, so let's get into the background purpose and how you would decide on an intelligent sales environment and where a journey would fit. We believe that you should have some kind of taxonomy or framework within which you want to make these decisions, and then decide what approach fits best depending on what you have access to. Hopefully, during that cycle, you would select us as the partner to make sure that we can solve these problems for you. So the first thing is, you really want to understand knowing what the bank needs to achieve. So you need to know what your KPIs are, what your KPIs are that those KPIs fit into. So you want to know what those indicators are that's going to drive success. Success could just mean the customer has used my transaction account once or twice more than I did the month before. They have accepted or they have applied for a certain product that I wanted them to apply, or they have settled a loan that they were supposed to settle, whatever the action is that I want them to take. And that means that I want to have an understanding of how the human in this system achieve the outcomes that they achieve. So that means that any AI journey typically will start with this thinking first. I really need to understand the intent. The other thing about intent is that it assists you with figuring out how a person is going to engage with your digital interface. So let's say that you want to create a conversational bank or some kind of chat interface where your customer can ask many questions about maybe their account, or if they haven't got an account with you, ask questions about how they can get benefit from signing up with you, or how their account will be different if they upgrade or downgrade, depending on how they see themselves in their own financial journey. You want to know what that intent is. So when you design your guardrail in your AI agent journey, that has already been predetermined. What you really have to harden in any AI agent environment is your intent detection engine. It should be your primary priority to get right first. It is the primary focus that you should focus on initially. And that means that you want to know who the initiator is. Are you initiating it as a bank, or as a telco, or as a company? Or is it the customer initiating a conversation inbound? And depending on that situation, you can then decide how you then conduct a conversation with whoever it is you're conducting with. But then, once you've detected the intent, you need a reliable approach to decide what the most appropriate instrument is to get the action eventually taken. So that means that the instrument is, let's say we look at the intelligent sales that this really is mostly about. If I want to take a person who has never signed up with me before through a journey, what can I do to get them to take that action? How can I get them to achieve that outcome? Is there a tool in my AI toolbox that I can access that will decide what I need to do next? And then is there a way I might decide how I can either educate, reward, scare, make the customer aware, or whatever it might be? And I want the approach to be decided upon based on the philosophy of how I'm going to engage with that customer. And that means you need a basket of capabilities or a basket of tools. Those basket of tools, typically in the AI world, will be agents. In our case, you'll probably run an MCP server, the Model Context Protocol server, that will allow you to gain access to the agents that have been published either inside your bank or outside your bank. And you want to be able to consume them. And I'll show you in a moment what those look like. Eventually, the purpose of doing all of this relates to an action that you want to have taken. So if the action that you want to have taken has got to do with a particular person signing up or a particular product being sold over a particular channel, you can clearly see and measure your success in bringing the person through that journey. The journey might start with somebody going through a web interface, app chat interface, human conversational phone interface, through an email interface, through a text, so it could be a multitude of entry points. Instead of deciding where you're going to select whatever it comes from and then make it quite unique, you want to be able to get the AI to decide how it's going to get a journey down, get a person down that journey to make sure the action that gets taken is beneficial to the bank and the person signing up with you. So that just means that you need to have this three-part story, well-structured, well-understood, and the tooling that gets used for each one typically will be different. You normally don't have a one-size-fits-all that will just go across every one of these pillars and get it done, completely without understanding the entire journey. Because in any large institution like a bank, you have a multitude of technologies that would need to come together to make this work. And eventually what you want a way that you can measure the metric that is achieved is in line with what you set out to do. So that's how you would decide on your use cases. You would decide on your business model, and your business story will use this exact mechanism. And on the back of that, you will create your financial model and decide if the action and the outcomes that are achieved, the metrics that you are measuring, are giving you what you need to achieve. And we found that if you do it that way, you normally will not get into trouble when you drive any of your AI implementation projects. Architecturally, this is kind of what you want an AI system to do, right? And there are many ways of doing this. For those who are interested, so you can go search for AI agent approaches. And I know that companies like Anthropic or OpenAI or, Mistral or any one of these organizations publish papers there on how they see agent journeys are supposed to work. You need to have a way in a bank to manage your risk. You want to have an incredibly well-defined taxonomy. You want to have incredibly well-defined rules and guides that will not get the person to get engaged in a conversation or hack what it is that you're trying to do for the intent that you are trying to detect. So you want a journey-based approach where your entry point and how the person needs to identify themselves, once that's done, the actions they go through need to be in the context of a conversational journey, linguistically useful, but in the context of the linguistic engine, inject facts. You want to make sure that the facts that you are obtaining are real data points that are available and that nobody, and especially from an agent or from a front-end point of view, can alter the result. So if you need a customer's bank balance, if you need a customer's credit score, if you need to know their domicile, if you want to use any of the data attributes that are well described and need to be accurate and precise, your agents that extract those are quite removed and securely isolated from the part that is linguistically important. So there is not, and we don't believe at the moment, a clear answer if you're going to use generative to do all of the extraction, everything for you, that is going to happen practically. You need to have solid customer identification, solid customer access, and in the middle, you use linguistic capabilities to guide the customer. So even if they ask about their friend's bank balance or a certain loan, you want to make sure that the fact is correct. If you're going to recommend a product, you cannot generate it with a generative tool. You need to have a catalog. You know what you sell, what it costs, what credit score is needed, what interest rate is applied. Those actual facts and what you recommend based on who the customer is needs to sit inside a recommender or inside a next best action engine that is totally and completely explainable. The linguistic capability is the ability for the human to interact and ask questions and guide how they want to get to an answer that's going to fit their story. And you want to bring these two worlds together, not use one for the other. Make sure that you make it practical for people to get into that scenario. But you need a framework, and this is kind of the way that we've seen successful projects play out over time. You need a place where you can make decisions architecturally, technically, process-wise, AI tool-wise, that you can slot the various tools into the exact purpose that they are going to serve, and then have an ability to access those tools and bring them into an AI journey. And I think that is what the agentic journey concept is giving us all as a capability. The AI tooling, and especially in the context of linguistic interfaces, have become incredibly useful in interpreting who we are and what we do, far more so than doing the work. You don't want a generative model to decide on a credit score implementation or on how, I'm going to recommend something to you. You want to have a scoring system that you know as to what your profitability looks like, what the customer score looks like, what their credit situation looks like, what you're attempting to achieve in the context of your business goals. different sets of tools that you want to map onto a model that shows linguistic capabilities, specialist, and access to accurate content, and you want to bring all of these worlds together into a single cycle. Now, when you do this, you can code for it, you can build for it, you can do many things, or if you speak to us, we can assist you with what's called the Ecogentic graph. The Ecogentic graph basically is an ability to take your linguistic tools, and you can then decide how and at what point the backend agent tools are selected. If the person asks a question for a loan and you need to pick up their current balance, find out how many products they have, check their credit score, and bring all of that back to your scoring system, use all of that when it comes in to be able to apply it in the context of your answer. You want that to be done systematically, reliably, and exactly the same way every single time. And you want to record the non-repudiated answer that was given back to your linguistic engine. But you want to be able to easily configure the journeys that bring all of that together and have the metadata accessible so that you can apply it even with additional tooling. You want to have Python libraries driving your pipeline or implementation. You want to have access to your data. You want to call external APIs. You want to call MCP agents that have already been put behind an MCP server. You want to be able to bring multitude of dimensions together to make sure that you can drive the outcome of your journey, depending on what the cycle is that you want to get to at the end of that. If you think about some of the conceptual background, what I could do, maybe just mid-webinar to demonstrate a quick concept to you, I'm just going to share our app and I'll explain one or two things to you and how that accesses the back-end technologies that is available. If you look at the Ecogentic Chat app, it is really just an app that's open source. For those who want to have access to it, you can gain access to it. The capability that we use inside the tool means that you can decide on any of your OpenAI models that you want to access. There's an Llama server that we host in our data center that is accessible. If you want to use Llama 3.2 or Mistral or DeepSeek or 5.4 reasoning, that's the latest model from Microsoft. That is their reasoning model. It's a great model, by the way, because it was trained almost entirely on highly curated data, so you can access it quite easily. And in the Ecogentic environment, if you are an ecosystem customer at the moment or a partner, and you have infrastructure running somewhere, and you've got an intelligence center or any one of the other about 40 or so different modules, you can point it to your server running on your infrastructure. So in this case, it is pointing to a server called Me server. You can then decide if you use the ecosystem.ai approach called fact injection, or you can go directly to an ecogentic journey. This demo has a backend server on what's called our Me server, so me.ecosystem.ai. It's an internal server for testing and demos. On there, we've got a default configuration with a security configured, default user configured, and the like, that can now be used to connect to a particular use case. So on this server, the use case that has been configured on the Ecogentic environment is intelligent sales. So we'll show that in a moment. And the ecosystem.ai is the one that has got a fact injection so that you can use it for tooling. You normally will not expose this to a customer directly. But if we take the ecosystem.ai scenario, and I want to know what is available, there's an engine behind the scenes that can tell you what the capabilities are that you can use your intent engine to go execute certain concepts. And if I don't know what configs are available, that means configs that are being created in a fact injection engine. And I go ask for configs, there's a number of them listed here. In your world, you would have described them probably better than I've done here for the demonstration, but the idea is that you can give them whatever name you want. So let's just say I want to use, in this case, bank customer that uses the ecosystem SQL and the accurate and precise interface. You just say use, and I'm going to do bank customer. And what it's going to do is now do what we call context setting. So now it tells me that my configuration has to be set to a particular configuration. Now what I'm showing you here is done manually through an interface. In your agentic journey, you want your agentic journey to detect an intent of a person either speaking or typing and automatically set the context based on the intent. If it cannot set the intent, it needs to tell the interaction person, I don't understand what you are saying, please retry. So if a person gives you 3 or 4 or 5 actions, you want to remind them that you are only capable of taking one instruction at a time. So you can interact using your intent engine and control whatever a sales journey might result in. How many transactions for customer 590? And because, if you had to set this up in a back end, what would have happened is that you would have set this up that the customer gets set and the back end configures that automatically. So in this case, customer 590 has 2,663 transactions, highly accurate, highly precise. If this conversation was set behind an agentic journey, you could ask as a customer, how many transactions do I have? How many times have I spent money on certain transaction types? How many times have I interacted with putting in fuel or whatever that might be? What is my average spend over periods of time? All of those can be entirely conversational, and the guardrail would have set it in the Ecogentic journey, where in this case, I'm just using the raw algorithm behind the scenes that drives the agent that does that kind of work for you. Okay, so the idea is that you can set up the scenario of how you want to connect with it. So if we clear this, and I go to the Ecogentic journey, in this case, it's pointing to the me server. So let's just say that, and I'm going to just say hi. Let's see what it comes up with. No, okay, that's not so clever. I'll tell Ramsey we can set it up in my demos. Okay. So basically, if your Ecogentic server has been set up, you can have your interactions. The guardrail gets set based on the journey that you're executing on. And that journey then guides everything you need to do to get the person to the outcome. So what does that mean? It basically means that if I want to take a sequence of cases and bring them together, especially in the context of front of wallet or sales, and especially in an intelligent sales style of journey, I want to be able to first and foremost understand how the customer's behavior is going to change or shift over time. And can I segment my customers beyond just their financial segmentation? Can I segment them based on their continuous behaviors, on the parts that they get involved in that will be useful to my business? And then, is there a way that I can then take all the cases that's going to take me down the journey all the way through to the fact that I can continuously engage with that customer intelligently and get AI implemented across every single one of those steps? So if I want to educate you, to show you why you should come to me, or why you should take up my loan, or why you should deposit your cash, or why you should take up a certain offer, then nudge you to remind you and put it back to the front of mind or top of mind. Each of those require a slightly different approach, depending on if it's linguistic or if it relates to your algorithm doing the work. So first in the story, we start with how we can visualize what we are working on. If you want to visualize, is there a way I can see what my customers are doing across the board? Right? So I think that classical dashboarding are still incredibly useful in this world. So it's not just about the question answer paradigm, but it's also about understanding how all the pieces that move in my business can be seen. If I want to understand what the customer scores are and how many customers are more active than others, I want to be able to look at what we call personality evidence. I want to see, is there a way or an approach that I can measure reliably, that I've learned enough about you as a person, and then use that to service you better? If I know very little about you, is there a way I can apply a model and use a cold start algorithm to get you to a next level so that I can collect enough evidence of engaging with you beyond just your financial capabilities? Most people today are multi-banked, have got multiple financial institutions, are scattered around the world, are performing financial interactions in various places. And then you've got other people who are only interested in buying a handful of goods per month, reliably the same. They might buy telephony airtime, put in some fuel in their motor car, or pay for some travel in the taxi. And you've got this broad spectrum of financial behaviors where in some cases the spend personality might be very similar. And that means you can speak to them in the same way or in a very different way than just looking at it from a financial segmentation point of view. The other thing is that rituals is enormously important to understand. And rituals give you an anchor to truly guide your story to what it is that people are going to engage with over time, so that you can almost play back their lives to them. In most cases, you might not even want to know how many times you put in fuel in the last 2 months, how many times you purchase certain kinds of products, or how many times you pay for your Netflix account, how many times you pay for your Uber, or whatever the scenario might be. But if it is going to affect your financial success as a customer, the bank can then find a far more proactive approach to sell and to prepare you to sell something to you that is more appropriate to your situation. So you can use intelligent sales to guide customer lifetime value by understanding the personality changes over time, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So the other thing is that spend preferences, money management preferences, and understanding a person's risk-taking profile or understanding their profile during certain times of the year all give you evidence to figure out what you can give from an offering point of view in a bank that is far more directed to making sure that you understand how the person is going to engage. And then the big part of dashboarding is to understand how your customers truly behave differently. What is the difference between an intentional spender and an experiential spender? And is there a way that I can get my intentional spender to be exposed to more experiences so that they can start spending with me when they go on vacation, when they do some traveling, when they get involved in certain media activities? You want to be able to do that in a way that is not necessarily per transaction. It's by their profile. It's by their personality around how they conduct themselves with you. And you want to be able to measure that over time and then map it back to what it is that is going to give you the right anchor input to get to the next step. And what we found, what also works well, is to map these scores back to, like in this case, there's this big focus on Gen Z. If you think about what happens in a Gen Z scenario, everybody thinks that it's only about a generation that is new to technology, but it's not really about that, because it is about a person that exhibits a certain set of traits when they engage with their bank. So if I'm 18 or 80 and I behave the same way, I shouldn't just be segmented on my age. I should be segmented based on my preferences. And you want to be able to figure that out. So that's why we often would do spend by age and amount to understand if there are differences and similarities that can guide your intelligent sales journey, especially if you want to calibrate the outcomes to be successful downstream. And then a crucial thing that gets done at the end of any cycle of investigation, in some cases we see that you could probably do this twice a month automatically. You want to be able to understand what's called personality drift. If I want to predict which customers are not going to spend with me next month, and I know that my my non-interest revenue and my net interest income are going to be affected by me not speaking to a customer in the right way or not nudging them in a certain way, I want to see that they are shifting their spending behaviors so that it's not just about the collections or whatever that might be in case let's say they don't pay their bill. It is about knowing why and knowing how I will communicate with you through this journey. The personality drift gives you an entry point into figuring out how you can communicate with this particular person. And then where generative works incredibly well, and in our case, we provide you with knowledge bases and an entire backbone of guardrail capabilities that can help you to give you what's called the next guided action. It's not about a best action, because you don't know if the action is best or not necessarily in a client scenario like in a bank. A guided action is an action that we have taken an algorithmic view on based on our understanding of you as a person. Then we took our generative tools that are action-oriented and recommendation-oriented, and we morph these two together and then provide you with recommendations around how can I sell more to this customer? What is a sales recommendation if I want to retain you, if I want to activate you? And this language gets used then by an agent or by an outbound tool or by a digital tool like your app to expose that messaging to the person, who will then be affected by the fact that the language provides the right kind of result depending on what that you are looking at in that moment. So that just means that you want to bring various capabilities into a single ecosystem of options. In our case, the intelligent sales module does that. It brings the behavioral components, the accurate and precise component, the repeatable, explainable algorithm, plus the generative capabilities into a single pool so that you can use it. That means if you want to take this example from earlier, I want to take you through the cycle of behavioral scoring in the context of, a division or a team within my organization. I want to start with taking the actual evidence of what I've gathered about you, take that evidence, analyze it using algorithms, figure out how I'm going to decide on the journey that I'm going to take you on, and then apply my generative and accurate tooling along that journey in the context of my Ecogentic capabilities. And I want to create a journey to make sure that I do not get things to go wrong along the way while I'm giving you answers.
Sorry, Jay, I don't mean to interrupt. It's just that we have a question. I was wondering whether we could ask it now. So the question is from Nicola, and she's just saying here, I often find that when a bot can't help me achieve a certain task, I want to speak to or be directed to a human being. Are these algorithms able to deduce when to involve a human in the system?
Yeah, that's a great question. The basic answer is all AI should have human intervention capabilities. So in our world, and if you think of how the Ecogentic configuration can be done, is that at any point you can set it up that there's a breakout to an actual biological being, mostly human. So the idea is that if you're in a chat conversation and you see that the person is not getting the answers they are expecting, you can then get the agent to do a breakout to a human agent. The human agent can continue having a conversation and maybe set a journey in motion that will then get the person to the end of wherever they want to go. So the idea is that, can I guide you from recommendation to inbox or to something that sits within my tray that I can say, yes, I want to take action on this. And at any point, you should be able to break out to humans. Yes, that is definitely something you want to consider continuously. It's important to get that done.
There was something you said in the slide just before this, which is about passing that information along, not just to the AI agent, but also to the human agent. And that means it comes through in multiple interfaces and not just through one sort of siloed space.
Yes. Yeah, so I think that the language that, is maybe not in our world as appropriate anymore as it is within a lot of our clients, is that omni-channel or single-channel interface is what everybody is striving for. The concept is saying, is there a way that as an institution, I can have a single perspective of the customer's intent? And if the intent is to apply for a mortgage versus applying for a new credit card or getting a savings account opened, whatever that might be, if we look at, let's say, new products, the decisioning, the process that you follow, the sequencing, the time lapse is very different from one instrument to another. So ideally what you want to have done is that if a person starts the journey over, let's say, the intelligent conversational interface, you want that to seamlessly go into the human world, back into the automated world, and then into the workflow world without the customer having to keep on asking questions about where is my application in the product. It should be something that is always exposed to the person. Doesn't matter which channel or which interface they're coming in on. You want to be able to straddle between all of them, definitely. Yeah, I think it's pretty important to get that done.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so just to close off with then a handful of examples, this explains that if you're going to bolt this kind of capability into your digital journey, it doesn't matter if it's an app or a web or how you interact with a human, but you've got two parts to it: before they've identified themselves and after they've identified themselves. You want to be able to give cold start or societal-based content that relates to a broad spectrum set of issues. Once they've identified themselves, you want to make it highly personalized to the person themselves. So that means the language, if I ask a question on the main app without having identified myself, please recommend a product to me, it's going to be vastly different than if I ask that question once I've identified myself. And the bank wants to offer both to drive intelligent sales. You want to know what type of questions are being asked by what kind of people, under what kind of conditions, what time of the day, over what channel. You want that to be fairly open, even if the questions that might be asked through the public interface might be crude or rude, might be wrong, might be terrible. It actually shouldn't really matter to you. All that matters to you is the fact that, am I learning about the way that humans interact with me, good or bad? Once the person has identified themselves, everything changes. Because now I've got evidence about who you are as a person. And now my non-repudiation data recording, my language guardrail, anything I ask about that's about my account might have to be doubly checked. I might have to go do an additional verification. But that also means that I can engage a person's intent based on how they conduct their account and bring that to you. So I think that there's a new age of engagement coming down the line that is only just starting. And we haven't really made sense of that to its fullest extent. In conclusion, if we think of the discovery phase, the idea behind this phase is that if we do awareness campaigns, learn for custom actions campaigns, if you're going to drive an intelligent sales journey, do a TikTok integration, a Meta integration, whatever integration it is across your social platforms, and make sure that can help you calibrate anything that happens within your awareness campaigns. Is there a way that you can directly guide it and then learn from the personalities? Is there a way that you can learn continuously? And that is the key. If you learn continuously and use AI to do that, it really will make a big difference for you. The other thing is that if I have a limited understanding of who you are and I want you to get you to engage, I might end up running things like, and in this case, it shows an example of the spend personality survey, let's say, that will help you get to what kind of things people care about, what kind of people are responding to what kind of offers that I'm giving them. And my intelligent sales should be able to do recommendations in many cases based on things we know that customer definitely will not want. So you want to keep on testing and promoting certain things that you know that will help you to get a better understanding of where the boundaries of engagement are over time. So that means that by the time you eventually get to activating the customer, you want to be able to have contextual scores, decide on the messaging, on the nudging, on the education, on how am I going to speak to you, how am I going to intervene with your life, how am I going to drive the entire sales journey in a direction that will give me a portfolio of options that I can offer you, so that by the time you end the journey and you get to a point where you want to really retain the customer, you might end up morphing in recommendations into your sales journey. If you have a partnership in place with a retailer, with a media company, with a services company, with a travel company, you want to be able to integrate what those offers are that your partners will benefit from in the context of your client base. The examples here show from Chase Bank, the offers that you normally get will be around where you can go and take your next vacation, where you can travel, what kind of movie you can watch, what kind of cashback you get from a certain market, what kind of food you can buy. So that means there are a number of different options that will become available to you because you now have an intelligent sales end-to-end cycle rather than just a product-focused market segment, only single channel-based focus that in often case happens inside a bank. You want to be able to open that up across a number of different opportunities that will exist across your entire customer base. And that means eventually when you want to retain customers and give them points and scores, you get to a conversation that they might have. That conversation will then educate you as the bank on what kind of things they would ask for, what kind of things they would want to request changes for against what it is that you already think you need to offer. In most cases, and in any intelligent sales engagement, there's often a big disconnect between what you think you can offer them or what you want to offer them versus what the customer actually really wants to do in the next phase of their lives. You can use intelligent sales to guide that journey to a specific outcome. So that's really it for today. The idea behind the webinar was to give you a glimpse of the journey and in some cases how it can be used. What we can do in the future sessions are going to come up that deal with the technical capabilities behind this, and we can go into how you can configure an entire Ecogentic journey, how you can integrate it with your app, with your web, with whatever interface you have, how you configure the different recommendations. We can help you through that journey, and we'll make sure that in the tech track, we'll cover the tech in detail, and in the business track or the webinar track, we'll cover the concepts to make sure that the core philosophies behind how we do these things are explained. Jess, I think that is it for me for today. I'm going to close it off there for now.
Excellent. Jay, thank you so much. That was really enlightening, as always, really amazing. I've said in the chat already that this recording will be available. There is a link to our YouTube channel in the Q&A section, as well as a link to our events channel. And Jay kind of preempted my announcement there. We will be launching our tech series events, which will happen once every 2 weeks on Wednesdays from a later time slot. So keep an eye out for those, and we will send updates shortly. There has been one more question from Madison referring to personality drift. I understand that a person's spending habit may change over time, hence the nudges and recommendations will change over time. However, is there any way a bank could also use spend personality to help nudge people towards better financial habits? For example, if I usually spend time on impulse purchases and experiences, but I want to focus on long-term savings, could spend personality nudge me towards better financial habits?
Great question. And I think that when we started this journey many years ago, our initial intent was to drive financial well-being as one of the primary focus areas. It eventually turned out that if a customer feels that they are being treated with respect and with a level of understanding, I can guide you to the point where I understand your financial situation. It is quite different than me exploiting the sales process at all cost. Well-being and getting to financial wellness over time is one of the core priorities behind how the spend money and other personalities that we worked on actually came about in the first place. The concept of you earning money and you having access to financial resources, you have a certain outflow of money every month. And obviously the fundamental principle is I must spend less than what I earn or whatever my inflows are. But that's not the only thing to care about, because if I only live on a knife's edge, I'm not in a good situation, because if there are unforeseen expenses like medical bills or dental bills or whatever that might be, then you're completely underwater. So you need to alter your lifestyle. Most people don't understand where they need to peg their lifestyle. And ideally, you should live 30 to 50% of what you earn, give or take, so that you can take your disposable income and drive your savings capabilities. And that's why you'll see that savings is an incredibly tough thing to solve over time. And the score can help with that. Because if I'm going to nudge you to purely make profit from you, at all costs, I want to sell you a loan, I want to get you into trouble. Not that I want to, but I might get you to, because I know that you're already living on a very thin margin. It's quite different than me recommending something to you that's going to get you to be well long-term, where initially I see that you are at a trajectory of growth in your life and you get into a better situation. So I'd rather nudge you to save and not take up the loans you are applying for. So that means that every single bank, every single product house within every single bank have got entirely different decision criteria as to how they tackle that. We provide the capabilities for the bank to do that. So yes, you can do customer lifetime value, customer wellness, financial wellness, longevity. All those parts form a global circle of your entire financial existence. And in most cases, the institution would decide how they want those to be broken up. Because if you, let's say, don't have an insurance product and you get yourself into a problem with your car accident, whatever it is, do I nudge you to get insurance if I know that you're a person that doesn't want to get involved in, let's say, certain risk products? So that means that the nudging system and the recommendation system is a complex ecosystem of environment. And that's why you need to have algorithms that can help you assess who the people are and then learn as fast as possible to adjust how you engage with them over time.
Excellent, Jay. Thank you so much. And thank you all for attending. And we'll see you guys next week.